We make ice cider. It's a sweet wine made from apples, combining the bounty of summer and the cold of winter. Our wines, like those of any winemaker, are driven by the landscape from which our fruit hails: the spring flowering, the summer maturation, and the fall harvest. In addition, we use the natural cold of the winter landscape to concentrate the juice from our fruit to create a naturally sweet wine. Although the cycle of winemaking is ceaseless, even before a vintage is in bottle, the next winemaking year has started. We need to begin somewhere, and for the purposes of practicality, let's begin with harvest. Subarctic summers are short and intense. For some of it, we have close to 24 hours of sunlight, but the time the trees have to flower, set, and mature their fruit is only around 90 days. This means that our apples are ready for picking in September. On the cusp between that intense time of light and the fall and the winter to come, which, in its darkest part, is the opposite of summer. Darkness close to 24 hours of the day. In September, however, there is still enough summer left to harvest apples without dreading the oncoming winter. When the apples are picked, we let them rest in cold storage, because we can't work again until the weather is cold. At the end of November, it's finally cold enough to freeze the apple juice that comes from pressing. By now, we're close to the winter solstice. That day just before Christmas, when finally the dark turns and slowly starts giving way to the light again. For now, though, we work in the cold and dark, pressing 10 tons of apples per day, pumping the juice into tanks that are left outside the winery to freeze by the cold winter temperatures of the place where we live and work. Once again, we wait. December will usually mean temperatures ranging downwards of 30 below centigrade. As the raw apple juice freezes, the water content in it freezes first, and the remaining liquid becomes relatively sweeter because the natural sugar in the juice functions as an antifreeze. That sweet juice is heavier than the ice from which it derives, and it drops to the bottom of the tank. Once we feel that the concentration is done, and this varies from year to year, we bring the tanks inside, let them thaw a little bit, and then we tap that sweet juice using the conveniently placed bottom valve of each tank. We then bring the tanks back out to refreeze and reconcentrate the juice. How many times we need to tap in any given year is different, but using the natural cold to concentrate the juice is not only a romantic notion or one of the rules for being able to call something an ice cider, it's also a true tool that allows a more thorough and therefore sustainable use of the raw material, which in turn has impact on the profile of the finished wine. The climate, weather, variety of fruit, fermentations, and aging. In addition, we depend on the character of our winters to shape the juice that shapes our wine. The concentrated juice is then placed in fermentation tanks to start the process of turning it into wine with the help of yeast. We try to not shape our ice ciders before they've shown us what they are, and so juice from different varieties as well as juice from differing sugar concentration is kept apart and allowed to ferment on their own, guided only by a set of very broad guidelines that we've decided from our experience as winemakers. Guided is the word and the best we can hope for. There's very little control can be asserted over these wines. Once the ice ciders have reached the balance where we feel they perform their best, fermentation stops. We rack, which is to pump the wine off the solid matter that is accumulated at the bottom of the fermentation tank, and then we filter the wine as gently as we can. Part of the vintage stays in steel tanks to be bottled within months, but some is held back. The deepest, darkest wines of the year are pumped into oak barrels to age and deepen further. We then smell, taste, discuss, and blend. And once that's done, we bottle. And we bottle everything in the winery, using machines that are far from automated. Each bottle, as well as the wine going into it, is touched, handled by human hands, time and time again, all the way into a box, ready to ship. By that time, the year has started again already. The apple trees are in bloom and the next harvest is around the corner. The year balances between the light that brings us bounty and the cold that takes that bounty into another dimension. Each vintage is an expedition into the unknown, but along the most familiar of paths. We lead and we follow.